IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, I'm Suman, your host for today, and I welcome you all to another episode of All Things Policy. As you all know, this is Takshashila Institution's daily podcast where we discuss current issues, interesting papers, and any other books in the field of public policy. Over the last few months, we have attempted to do some podcasts discussing various issues in the areas of public health, nutrition, migration, employment, things that affect all of us in this country. A common theme that we have highlighted across this is the changing welfare architecture in India. In today's episode, we will do a deep dive of this fascinating area of study. We will also discuss one specific issue, which is the piped water and its effect on women's empowerment. To discuss this in detail, I have with me my colleague, Apurva, who is the staff program manager at the policy school at Takshashila Institution. He manages the postgraduate program and researches and writes extensively on public health in India. Welcome, Apurva.
Thank you, Suman. Thanks for having me. And since you spoke about PGP, I just wanted to tell our audience that the application process for the postgraduate program in public policy, which is a 48-week long program, has started. And the cohort begins from 15th of January. The application deadline is 8th January 2022. We also have early bird application where we are offering interesting scholarship to early bird application, and the last date to apply for avail early bird application is 4th December. So if you're interested in taking a deep dive into public policy, then please go ahead and check out our PGP program and its course structure on our website.
Yeah, and if you just want to understand the basics of public policy, you can look at our GCPP courses. We'll talk about it a little later. So let's begin by discussing welfare architecture. Apurva, could you just explain the entire mechanism through which, welfare, when we talk about welfare, it appears that it's very socialist, but it is an important aspect of governance in India. So could you talk about the structure by which, this welfare has been over the years, been delivered?
Right. So, Suman, when you say welfare, I think for me the definition of welfare is not a very sort of a socialist, but it is, if I may use a word, it's the provision of public services. For me, that's the definition of welfare. And every democratic state has sort of kind of an obligation to provide some basic public services to its citizens, and India is no exception. Right, and India has been doing this since its freedom. So are other democratic countries. So basic public services mean providing public goods to its citizens. So it could be health, education, or sanitation, or other public goods. And Indian state has been doing it. In fact, I mean, in all previous episodes, I have spoken about India's precocious development pathway, in which I have argued, taking Arvind Subramaniam's argument that India started redistribution at a very early stage where the per capita income was not that great as compared to other countries that also started redistribution, right? So India started redistribution early, but what has happened is that the Indian state, and especially for the past few years, I would say, Indian state has started focusing on private goods than public goods. So they have started focusing on distributing or providing private goods such as toilets such as bank accounts, cooking fuel, houses, so on and so forth, to its citizens. Now, one may wonder, and this is also something that I have argued in all previous episodes, that why suddenly, if sudden focus, why this is an overnight focus on private goods? The answer to that question is fairly simple, because these private goods are very easy to, I think, very easy to deploy. They are easy, they are tangible, they are visible goods. You get material benefits. The material benefits are tangible, they are measurable, and they are attributable also, right? So if a political party is sort of providing private goods, the material benefits that you get from the private good is attributable to the political leader or the political party, right? And in India's clientelistic politics, all of this fits into fits perfectly into the scheme of things. And that's why, I mean, it's in several sort of platforms, and earlier episodes I have said that why public health is not has never been a focus, because the very nature of public health has been public, it's a public good. And if you work on, let's say, child malnutrition, or let's say sanitation, the gestation period or the return of investment, if I'm use the word, goes beyond the 5-year electoral
Cycle.
sort of time period, right? That's why the investment and the incentive to invest on public health is not that great. And that is why the demand from us, the citizens of India, for a robust public health or a good sanitation or a good tap water, we are talking about tap water, so the good sort of source of tap water or clean pipe water is not that great. So this is where we are when it comes to welfare architecture, or services provisioning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was fairly visible during the pandemic. I mean, in the years preceding the pandemic, the government has taken an approach towards, providing more insurance through the Ayushman Bharat scheme instead of, or I mean, we can't completely say one has substituted the other, but the push has been more towards insurance rather than building public health services like your PHCs or any other such thing. And the lack of these kind of services was so evident during the COVID-19 crisis, that I think at least some of us have got an understanding of why these systems, or the entire architecture of this public health system, needs to be put into place. Right. Similarly, if you're talking about gas cylinders and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, it's great to be providing tangible goods, but if the overall outcomes to the general well-being of people are not improving, then I don't think we're going too far with that, right? So here we need, again, for our viewers, for our listeners, we would like to really make a distinction between public and private goods, okay, in the economic reasoning sense, and not just the English sense. Okay, so to
Also,
understand,
Suman, if I may,
yeah, go
if I
ahead.
may chime in for a bit, I mean, before the episode, we also spoke about the bicycle sort of scheme in some of the states, right? So when I
Yeah,
say, I'm not sort of demeaning, neither am I sort of denigrating provisioning of private goods, because the bicycle scheme in Bihar is one of the perfect example as to what good it can do to adolescent girls or girls going to school. It has increased the enrollment ratios. It may or may not have also increased the educational outcomes. And papers, a study by Karthik Muralidharan and Nishit Prakash, they speak about the success of this particular scheme. But having said that, I mean, just look at the paradox. The Indian state, and in this case it's the state of Bihar, the Indian state has managed to keep the girls in the school, but again, in the Indian state doesn't sort of, it shies away when it comes to sticky issues, right? Have Has the Indian state ensured that girls from the vulnerable communities are also in the same school or going to the same bicycles? What are the learning outcomes? Are the learning outcomes of all social groups equal? That is something that we
yeah.
need to be concerned about.
It's an issue that falls between the state and society. I guess it has to come from both sides, but the state has to push towards getting better outcomes out of that. Right? Yeah. So at this point, again, public goods, private goods, I understand. I mean, from the economic perspective, most of us know the difference. But if our listeners want to get a deep dive into concepts such as these, to learn more about economic reasoning, then we'd like to recommend our courses for you. We have educational programs lasting one semester, which is the GCPP, and like Apurva said, the PGP program that are tailored specifically for people like all of you, our viewers. All these courses are online and you can take them from anywhere. Admissions are now open for all our GCPP courses as well as our postgraduate course. Our program begins 15 January and the last day to apply for a 10% early bird scholarship is 4th December, and the application deadline is 8th January 2022. For more details, you can visit school.takshashila.org.in. Yep. At this point, we'd like to take a break. We'll come back after the break.
Today, with employees and IT teams no longer working under the same roof, fixing glitchy PCs and proactively managing the PC fleet is increasingly difficult. Intel vPro addresses these problems with two technologies. Intel Active Management Technology establishes a secure connection between Intel IT and Intel vPro-based PCs. In the event of a cyber attack, Intel Active Management Technology, or Intel AMT, lets IT repair and manage multiple systems simultaneously wherever they may be. The second technology is Intel Endpoint Management Assistant, or Intel EMA. EMA enables manageability via simple cloud-based web tools. Both these tools are part of the Intel vPro platform and allow faster response times, fewer help desk tickets, and lower support costs. Visit intel.in/IT Heroes to know more. Remember, Intel vPro, it's built for business.
Welcome back. Now that we've done some foundations on welfare architecture, what does welfare mean, what are public goods, what are private goods, we'd like to discuss an interesting paper that we have read, which is a job market paper titled Piped Water, Welfare and Women's Empowerment, Empirical Evidence from a Gendered Analysis in India. This paper is authored by Ashish Kumar Sedai, who is a PhD student of Colorado State University. Okay. The paper finds, from the summary of the paper finds that increasing access to indoor piped drinking water delivery increases the likelihood of women's employment. It increases women's wages and also improves health outcomes. It also improves child health outcomes and therefore again improves women's empowerment. Okay, so Apurva, what was your main takeaway from this paper?
Suman, when I was reading the paper, I couldn't help but recall the episode that that all of us heard and read a few years ago, which was Maharashtra's water wise. I hope you remember that episode, right? That news item. So in Maharashtra, several districts and villages that are hit by drought, the men sort of started polygamy, which means that they started marrying women outside their marriage, and these women were either widows or abandoned women who were not mainstreamed into our society. And their utility, and I just hate using that word, but their utility in that household was just to fetch water, right? Because it's a drought prone area, it's a drought hit area, and the women, I mean, not only in Maharashtra but in several parts of India, women have to walk miles and miles to fetch water, collect water, and then come back and store water, right? So the basic argument, central argument of the paper is quite similar to the work that other organizations, civil society organizations in India, working extensively on water, they have also argued the same thing, that the burden of collecting water disproportionately goes on to the Indian women, and especially in rural India and slums in India, because you don't have access to piped water, which is the sort of the main central, I would say, protagonist in this paper, indoor piped water. Since they don't have access to indoor piped water, they have to walk miles and miles to fetch that water and then to store the water. If there's one aspect that is not covered, and I think I don't know whether this was the scope of the paper, but it is also the sanitation needs of women, right? So women, even if they have to relieve themselves, they have to walk miles and miles, either into the field or into secluded areas. And we have seen over the years how these are very unsafe practices, especially in Indian slums and in rural India.
Yeah, I think they all have a cascading effect on each other in the sense that water, sanitation, electricity, all of them play an important role, because once you have this, then a woman's um, time, a woman's labor or leisure, both of these, I mean, it's a choice that she can make. So she can spend extra time either on other labor or on leisure or on any other thing. And that that empowers women in a variety of ways. It gives women access to, say, jobs or something that which she would not have done had she not had piped water or or any of these public or goods that confer positive externalities to everyone.
That's right, Suman. So I think what you're implying is that since they have a big proportion of their energy and mental and physical resources are sort of getting wasted into collecting water and fetching water, that is why they're not able to invest their time and resources into productive sort of work that can bring them into the sort of market, that can sort of create a new source of livelihood, that can give autonomy and decision making ability to the women, right?
And it also ties into the family health, because stagnant water, collected water is a more dangerous source, or is a more is a source of water which is likely to have more germs, and therefore your contamination levels are high because of collected water as such. So surface contamination is high. So
Right.
usage of this collected water actually worsens health outcomes within a family, and therefore, conversely, having piped water will actually improve health outcomes. And then again, this, because women take up disproportionate responsibilities within the household, again, freeing up that part of it will actually help them get into the labor force in a better way. Right. Another issue with relation to water is actually a social issue. Water is in India is just not an economic issue, or just not like a political issue. It also has a lot of ramifications on caste and of course, gender. So it is a very touchy issue. Okay, so have you read anything about how this thing plays out? I mean, we all know that there are different wells for different castes, and people don't, intermingle and all that. So, where does this fit in into the entire problem?
Right. So I think as M. N. Srinivas years ago, decades ago, in fact, told us that how Indian villages are being spatially mapped, wherein you have people from lower caste almost at the periphery of the village. So, which means that the women of these households, of these communities, they have double burden of collecting water, because not only the gender, now you have a caste angle to it, right? But also when we say gender, we also tend to forget sort of gendered minorities, Suman, right? Because these are again sort of a vulnerable section of society, and they are also in Indian sort of rural setup, or even in urban setup, they live in ghettos, or outside of villages, and to fetch water, it's a huge task because of the stigma that is associated with their gender, as well as other social factors. And so I mean, it's a double or triple whammy for such vulnerable section to collect water. And that is why the argument of this paper and several other literature is that if the policies are are designed in a way that they invest in the improvement of infrastructure of tap water or pipe water, then I think most of the problems that we have just spoken about can be addressed through that policy intervention.
Yeah, I think we made some beginning in 2009 or so, where the National Rural Drinking Water Plan it moved away from saying that we will supply water to villages to saying that we will supply water directly to household. That takes away the intermediary, at the village level, distributing water based on caste or whatever else, whatever other ways that they could discriminate against. Yeah, so because of which you saw an increase in pipe drinking water to the tune of 3.5%. 3.5 may sound a very minuscule number, but given the scale and given the the number of people it would touch, I think it's a significant contribution towards realizing the goal. But again, the paper says that between 2015 and 18, because this is the time we have moved from, actual public goods to private goods, thing, there has been no significant increase in access to pipe drinking water. They have taken this from the 6 poorest and the most populous states in India, which shows where we stand with regards to access to pipe drinking water. Yeah, so I think, what our listeners need to understand is that what you expect from a government should be based on certain economic reasoning, and it will more often than not be slightly counterintuitive. Therefore, to learn these things is an important thing for us as citizens. Yeah. So, Apurva, your closing thoughts on this?
No, so since you mentioned about states, Suman, so I was just reading Jal Jeevan Mission, because we haven't spoken. So I think Jal Jeevan Mission is also a step towards sort of creating that, building that infrastructure, because I think their vision is to provide tap water to every Indian household by 2024. Now, how much are they able to achieve? That's just a matter of time, and we still have 2.5 years, or I think over 2 years to see how where it goes. But I was just looking at the national guidelines of Jal Jeevan Mission, and since you spoke about states, there is a map. I think the first initial few pages there is a map of India that shows the state-wise tap connections, and states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and most of northeastern states, the tap connections is somewhere ranging between 0% to 10%, right? And these are the most populous states. These are the states that have the biggest gendered fault lines, right, historically and at present. So a lot needs to be done on that front as well.
Yeah, and all of this have a very gendered impact in the sense that, street lights, water, electricity, all of this impacts women far more. So provisioning of these kind of public goods will actually help solve the women's employment, women's empowerment issue too. So a lot of social issues you have different levers through which you can solve some social issues, right? I think this provisioning of public goods should be seen as one of the levers through which we solve the women's safety, women's empowerment issues. So public goods is just not a convenience. It is important for, everybody, and it's for us to demand that of the government. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely, Suman. And I think everything you just said is spot on. And as a citizen, we should demand those services and those basic goods from the government, just to have basic kind of infrastructure of these goods, like water, health, sanitation, basic education, primary education, and so on and so forth.
Yes, on that note, I think we should wind up this episode. Thank you so much, Apurva, and we'll see you guys in a few episodes from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Suman, for having me.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, If you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle at TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi are in conversation with journalist Pallavi Iyer. They talk about her having lived in so many different cities, adulting through it all, and what motherhood means to her and how young folk can lead better lives and support the nation's progress. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth asks if energy management is just a better way of time management. Tune in to find out if this is practical and possible. On Khel Niti, Rajiv Mishra, Ayaz Memon and Sabah Karim talk about Team India's elimination from the T20 World Cup, Pakistan's new team, and New Zealand stepping into the semi-finals. On Smile India, Shifa discusses a Kolkata-based NGO that's trying to help single-screen cinema survive. And on Hansvani, hear the story Mere Liye Ek Minute and find out why a depressed man mourns his own death by observing silence for a whole minute. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do follow us on YouTube. We have a number of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where you'll be able to take a look at all of the channels we have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much. You make this possible.
Do you like true crime stories?
Do you like to learn about the people behind some horrible, awful crimes?
More specifically, women that may have committed these crimes.
Actually, Indian criminals that are women?
Then we'd like to welcome you to our podcast, Misconduct. My name is Raghavi.
And I am Nisha.
We cover themes like murder, dacoity, drug trafficking, financial fraud, kidnapping, and many more.
You can catch us every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcast.